I bet you may have seen some 1.4.5 only weapon videos going around recently. However, I bet you haven't seen it with not the bees. I can only deal damage using 1.4.5 weapons. Yeah, sure, if I accidentally hit a bee with a pickaxe, it's not as if I'm going to fail the challenge automatically. As you can see, we're making the character screen, and obviously, for our first challenge, we're going to make it into a bee. So for the seed, as I said, we are doing not the bees, a giant jungle essentially. Like every Terraria playthrough, the normal first step is to get rid of the copper short sword entirely. So, we start off with very little weapon-wise. However, for the not the bees seed, you can at least get a lot of mud very quickly. And this new weapon, the mud ball, it's have a look for yourself. My first initial goal when thinking about this challenge would have been getting the acorn slingshot. It doesn't cause as much damage as the mud balls. The mud balls, as you can see, create constant pillars. But for some odd reason, acorn slingshots cannot drop from mahogany trees. I do have a plan to get dirt and therefore grass and then maybe a tree. However, that never happened in the end. I do discover something strange. In 1.4.5, hive blocks are able to shoot bees, which means that this block is technically a weapon that was added in 1.4.5. And it's immediately switched out my mud balls because I just can't deal with the constant pillaring that it creates. Next up, I was trying to find cobwebs so I can craft one of the new early game whips. I go exploring, I break a shadow orb, and I end up finding dirt in a sky island. And I also find a celestial magnet. Bear this in mind. I make my way to the edge of the world because I want to find Cativa or Foxsparks. I have no idea how they spawn. All I know is that they do depend a bit on luck. So I spend a few in-game days, about a week, trying to summon them. On the way to doing that, I also try finding a conch, which I do, and I teleport between the two oceans. I discover the new dungeon variety in 1.4.5. What the? Whoa, is this... What? I'm assuming this is a 1.4.5 thing. Wow. I kind of feel bad that it gets rid of the old dungeon design, but like nostalgia-wise. However, this is also very cool. Then, with just a beehive and a piece of cobweb, the game thinks I'm ready enough for the Eye of Cthulhu. And of course, you can see how it's going. Doing 29.5% of the damage required with just bees and the occasional cobweb swing was okay. However, the day straight after that, I just get Cativa randomly. Okay. The AI of the goblins kind of got screwed up from me not doing anything while they were still on screen, so they just disappear. And then I do a little roundabout way of getting her free, and we now actually have a weapon. Oh, are you friendly now? Yes! 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 Oh my days. Remember how I told you to watch out for that celestial magnet? Well, yeah, I get a second one. There are also a lot of instances where I'm starting to go mentally insane from this challenge. How much lead do I need for a lead chuck if a lead chuck would check lead? Oh my days, poo. I love poo. So, to rank every weapon that we've used, or tried to use in this playthrough so far, mud bowls, I'd say C tier. They're fine as damage output goes, however the pillaring is a major downside to them, so I think C tier is fair for their level. The Acorn Slingshot. While I haven't used it in this playthrough, its damage is 5, its speed is fine, it's quite fast, it has pretty bad knockback, and I'd say it's actually slightly worse than the Mud Bowl because acorns are more annoying to get. Obviously you can buy them, however that's annoying, past which when you can buy them, they're kind of useless. So, I'd say F tier. The Cob Whip. A really slow whip, however it does decent tag damage. The spiders are very helpful, and I found it quite useful for my quest of getting to this stage. So, A tier. The Hive Block. While the summoning of the bees is kind of annoying, it's very inconsistent, but I think it was also pretty solid. So, A tier. So, for Chapter 2, the plan is simple. I want to get to the stage of progression where Pre-Hard Mode is very open, i.e. getting post-evil boss weapons. The game tests my plan of beating bosses immediately. I get a natural Eye of Cthulhu spawn. However, with my good reforges and my new weapon, I am able to fail. I die with it just under 100 health. Kativa's fine, just not great for the dashing. So, yeah. I go back to the edge of the world and get lucky. I get Kativa again, hooray! And Kativa again, hooray! However, one of them has a better reforge, so I try the Eye of Cthulhu again. I do worse. It flies away. I did not do enough damage that time. I don't know what was different between the two attempts, but the better reforge was worse. Then, the game realizes I haven't beaten a boss yet, so it tries to throw the slime rain at me. And a natural king slime spawns. Yeah, I fail, because it was a bit difficult, innit? Remember that shadow orb I broke in the first chapter of the playthrough? Right. Yeah, that caused a goblin army to eventually spawn. However, the very next day, I get a Fox Sparks, which is great. This is, honestly, way better. I'm fighting off the goblins, but also I have an Eye of Cthulhu spawn in the middle of the night. Equipped with my new Fiery Fox friend, I fight the Eye of Cthulhu. The battle is long and painful, however I do eventually kill it. The constant fire debuff is great, so I do kill the Eye of Cthulhu quite simply. With my newly acquired Demonite, I craft the Soul Scourge. The Soul Scourge is a way better whip than the Cob Whip. The Cob Whip has served me well though. The Dryad also finally arrives. With the Dryad's arrival, I can finally buy some grass seeds. With these grass seeds, I build a giant platform above the corruption and start planting trees there, so I can eventually try getting a bloody slingshot. The next day, I take on King Slime. And with Fog Sparks, it's great. He's made out of slime, isn't he? So, you just kind of kill it with fire, you know. With my newly acquired Solidifier, I use gel to craft the Slime Spear and the Slime Whip. They're fine, they're not great. It was fine using them. I prefer the Soul Scourge, to be honest. For the amount of effort that you have to go through to get these, like, it's unlikely that King Slime is your first boss in most playthroughs. So it's just like any other spear, except for if you pair it with a fire flask or something, it would do really well. Afterwards, I of course go for the Eater of Worlds. The first attempt is kind of just long. It was kind of shit. I die quite so quickly. I forgot that it was slightly more difficult than just to stand still and tank. The night right after, I try Skeletron, which of course I fail at because, you know, I can't even deal with the Eater of Worlds, so. A few in-game days later, I eventually get enough resources to summon the Eater again, and I accidentally teleport back home and try running back to the arena quite quickly. However, it kind of despawned. It was quite mean. It was about to come up, and then it just was like, nah. After another small Eye of Cthulhu fight, I find this event called the Coin Rain, which is interesting. I don't exactly know how many coins it gives. Maybe it gives more coins later in the game, but I don't know. It wasn't worth my time. I wanted to go to the Eater of Worlds. This fight was quite long, but I set up a few more platforms, and we did well, and we won. And to end off Chapter 2, I find the Goblin Twinkerer. And yes, I do say Twinkerer. He's a twink. Like me. Anyway, from here, the weapons get a lot better. So, to conclude Chapter 2, I'm going to rank the weapons as I did for Chapter 1. So, first, Kativa. Kativa's pretty solid. She teleports to wherever the mouse is pointed when summoning her, which is great, especially when the weapons before have had 0 wall penetration, so I think that's pretty good. I'd give her a solid top of A tier. The next weapon I get is the Soul Scourge, and I'm just going to shove in the Vasculash with it, because they're both the same thing, it's just one's a different biome. It doesn't really matter. I will still get both for completion's sake. They're fine. Nothing amazing as a whip goes. It's definitely better than the Cob Whip though, but in terms of progression, it's still... It's a bit more annoying to get than the Cob Whip, but I will still put it higher. The next weapon I do get is Fox Sparks, and this is an immediate S tier for me. This thing, a literal flamethrower, is so good, especially for this sort of progress in the game, because it can be attained pre-boss, and it basically does everything until hard mode. So I'm gonna put it basically at the top of S tier. I don't think there's anything better. The first two post-boss weapons are the Slime Whip and Slime Spear. Both of them are pretty ass, especially since they are post-boss. King Slime isn't the most difficult boss in the world, but you should at least get a bit more of a reward from fighting him. I'm going to put them in C tier, above the Milk Bowl. And finally, a weapon that I haven't actually rated or used in this playthrough, but I have used it in a different one before. My Master Mode Don't Dig Up World Seed, I used this, not as a weapon. As an axe, it's pretty ass, you can't even cut down cacti with it, it's just annoying. Also, it loses some of the properties of the Axe of Regrowth. Honestly, just don't make it, it's not worth it. I think F tier, below the Acorn Slingshot. Well, to start off Chapter 3, I find a meteor on my screen. The meteor and its ore, meteorite, can allow me to craft some of the new 1.4.5 weapons, such as the pink phase blade and I think rainbow phase blade, I'm not too sure about that, and the Star Crash whip. So I go straight for it. I start combining accessories to get a bit stronger. I find a bee larva inside of a living tree, which is great. I need to be a bit more careful on the outside edges of the world after learning this. I drink a random teleportation potion. I end up in a random mushroom biome quite far down. I set up some NPC housing there, and I also hopefully set up a pylon. I say hopefully because I didn't. I'm kind of stupid. I just realized I didn't set up a pylon to these two. So, in that mushroom biome, however, it wasn't all for naught. I got a Staff of Regrowth, which allows me to eventually make the Axe of Regrowth and then the Exorang. Then I do find the Shimmer, which is great. I set up a pylon there, correctly this time, and get a few permabuffs. I also shimmer the Axe of Regrowth into the Exorang, and I think it's fine. And then I realize it doesn't actually allow me to shake the trees, so I get really pissed off. And eventually I do succumb to it. It's a good axe. It's just, you know, when I still haven't gotten the bloody acorn slingshot, I also set up a proper mushroom biome on the left side of the world and craft this Star Crash whip. I use the Star Crash against another goblin army which decides to spawn, because, you know, they always do. I also get another Kativa, I don't really care about that. I try Skeletron again. I try Skeletron again. I then make the mushroom staff. And I kill the travelling merchant for a bit of extra shimmer related nonsense. I then set up some mushroom pylon housing in the underground. For some reason they didn't have any space to stand, 2 of them out of the 3. But they were all identical, so I have no idea what was going on there. I just thought it was strange, I don't know why it's like that. I then finally get the acorn slingshot, which allows me to switch finally back to the Axorang. Oh, it is a lot better than the regular copper axe, so I'll give it that. I fall into the lava in hell, and I spot a larva on my screen. In post-editing, I also see another one on my screen on the left. However, I do be cautious of that. But my summon doesn't. What? So I actually just get to have to fight Queen Bee. Luckily, I just log off and rejoin, but, you know, it's annoying. And I feel like this isn't going to be the only time that this happens. I fail Skeletron again. And, by the way, during all this, I have been fishing for oysters in the Oasis biome to finally get a pink phase blade. However, I don't get any so far. I also get the Hellforge, to which I craft the obsidian armor. And with this, I think I will end off chapter 3. Again, like the first chapter, I start going mentally insane. I can't pronounce basic English words, like I have done for a lot of the narration in this. Oh wait, that's a shush. Yeah, okay. Okay, well, Kativa and Kativa and Fort Spark. Oh my days, I can't speak. Kativa and Fox Sparks. I also try to crack up jokes. Joke is a very strong word in this use case, but, you know. Right, so I need some vines. Normally they just appear here, so I should be fine. So I should be fine. 6, 7. I also receive various things, such as items. Where did I get so much poo from? And a Steam notification. Firstly, I haven't. What do you mean the Roaring Knight is playing VR chat? Alright, so unfortunately I'm a bit stupid, right? So I've messed up quite a lot of the rankings, so I'm just going to redo it on the screen right now. For the next few weapons, the Mushroom Boy, the Mushroom Staff, whatever you call it, it's just not that great. For a post-evil boss weapon, it's kind of ass. I'm gonna put him into C tier. And finally, the Star Crash Whip. I'm gonna put it into A tier. It's a lot better. Yeah. When going into this chapter, I wanted to defeat the Queen Bee. I wanted to get Bizoar as well to help with that. However, to stop me from building my arena, which looks quite shit, I get another goblin army, which is fantastic. I then wait until a windy day and get ladybugs for luck potions. I then finally defeat this goblin army and craft the luck potions with black pearls. I then carry on doing quest fishing, and one time I do get a pink pearl. Pink pearl, oh my days, oh my days. And I craft the pink phase blade. However, I do need a second one, because I'm going to craft the new pink phase saber. So, you know, I have to farm even more. And then, with all my fishing, I make some frog webbing, which actually helps me defeat Skeletron this time. I head straight into the dungeon and start looting, except for I'm stupid and I summon the Queen Bee. Oh! However, I teleport back home, go into my stupid-looking arena, and actually defeat her. This is genuinely the first time that I've ever defeated Queen Bee at the intended stage of progression, so I'm quite happy with that. I make some bee armor, and if you didn't know, you can shimmer the bee nades that you get into more beeswax, which allows you to craft more bee things. The Witch Doctor also appears, and I guess the Clothier, but I don't really care about that. I go loot the dungeon some more, and get the Ram Rune, which I know is a new thing, but I couldn't really care about it. I then buy the Pygmy Necklace from the Witch Doctor. I noticed the lack of dungeon enemies spawning, which is interesting. I think it's a bit worrying, but oh well. We'll figure out whether that's a problem in hard mode or not. I seed lightning for the first time in 1.4.5. What the fuck is that? Oh! It's happening again. Can I get electrocuted? I then make an infinite gem farm in the shimmer by accident, using critters that tend to just fall in. I start collecting hellstone for a few things, but not too important. I shimmer down some gems and finally get the rainbow phase blade, which in all honesty is a lot easier to get than the pink phase blade. And I make a second one because, you know, I need it for making the phase saber. I then get another goblin army where I actually bothered to record the entire thing this time. I collect water leaf for luck and use my final luck potion to open, in total, the final 37 of 119 oysters, which I finally get the other pink pearl from. So that's basically 1 per every 60 oysters. I set up some hell housing and another further away pylon, and I try fighting the wall of flesh, which goes really badly. I barely scratch its health down, and I just give up. I save and exit because I don't want to lose my buffs. I then farm imps for the obsidian rose and finally craft the Terra Spark boots, which took too long. I then have another attempt at the wall of flesh, where it was a bit better, but really not that great, and I run out of Hellbridge and die. And during this time I realize I've never actually beaten the wall of flesh with a different armor set from the molten armor. The problem is I'm not very good at Terraria, so I will still die because I can't dodge the lasers or the hungry. So I set out to make a tank build. I shimmer reforge all of my accessories to warding. Luckily the Terra Spark boots did it in one turn. I get some more hellstone for the actual armor after a few more reforges, which turns my measly previous defense points to 49. During this, I also tested the Wall of Flesh with this new build with 49 defense and the same buffs, and I beat him about here, and I decided, because I've built a better Hellbridge in this world, that I could probably take him on. So, for my final Wall of Flesh attempt, despite Foxbarks being a pre-boss weapon, it was incredibly good in this fight. I have no idea why it's so good, and the Wall of Flesh is getting pretty fast, but in the last few moments I do kill it, and we get into hard mode. I then use my newly acquired Pwn Hammer to break some demon altars, and I go to the other corruption as well, and break them there, and get a bunch of extra ores. And I think that concludes chapter 4. And obviously, like every chapter so far, we're going to rank the weapons and do a little bit of shifting. Kativa is annoying. You can only summon one of her. She is better dealing damage than the little mushroom guy. However, she's not exactly the greatest. So I'm gonna put her actually below the Cobwhip. Finally, the two phase blades. One of them's pink, one of them's rainbow. The rainbow is actually excellent. 15 gems of any single type, giving you a single coloured phase blade, are more useful in hooks and stuff. So I think phase blades are kind of annoying. However, if you just have multiple lying around and not that many, then the rainbow phase blade is a really good option, and I think I'd put it in the top of A tier. The pink phase blade, however, so much effort for such little reward. Not even a reward, you can just get it from the same materials as everything else. So really, D tier, I think below the mud bowl. Thank you for making it this far into the video. Do make sure to like, comment, subscribe, anything please, if you want a part 2. Bear in mind that the rankings are not permanent, they have actually changed. I've recorded some of the next parts. This has been Devious Demi on YouTube, signing off.